Welcome to The Rabbit Hole, Politics and Prose, a production of LibertyNation.com, hosted by Mark Angelides.
McCarthyism is described as the practice of making accusations of subversion or treason without proper regard for evidence. It was a dark period in the history of the US that began in 1947 and ran through much of the 50s, leaving behind it a scarred and weaker country. But it appears that once again we're on the cusp of making past mistakes. Widely seen as a response to the Second Red Scare, the hunting out and public naming of suspected communists did not begin with Senator McCarthy brandishing a piece of paper at a West Virginia women's club where he stated, quote, "I have here in my hand a list of 205, a list of names that were made known to the Secretary of State as being members of the Communist Party and who, nevertheless, are still working and shaping policy in the State Department," end quote. In fact, the precursors came from the Democrat President Harry S. Truman's Executive Order 9835, which mandated that all federal employees be screened for their loyalty. It required that those who work for the government should not be involved with organizations that the Attorney General deemed subversive, totalitarian, fascist, or communist. The mission was to ensure that those who worked for the government were not actively trying to undermine it. One would think that this was a period of history that we'd all rather not visit again. Yet the tactics and denouncements are once again being embraced by zealots who seek to instill fear in honest folk. We appear to have a new Red Menace. And once again, leaders within nations are marshalling their forces to fight the enemy. The issue here being that the enemies are those who believe in the Constitution and have a desire for freedom from state-sanctioned tyranny. We see members of the Hollywood elite blacklisted for their work, banned for expressing their views on social media platforms, and denigrated publicly for their supposed wrongthink. But it's not just the lords and ladies of the silver screen who fall victim to this new overarching orthodoxy. Regular people expressing their opinions in a public forum are being threatened, bullied, doxed, fired, and ostracized. Even worse, thousands of people are being investigated and harassed by the police and made criminals. In the United Kingdom, it appears the easiest way to silence a dissenting opinion is to accuse someone of a hate crime. The police recording of hate crime incidents has increased dramatically over the last several years, leaving many with permanent stains on their records that limit future employment opportunities and can seriously damage personal relationships. But here's the thing. According to the UK police force, a hate crime or hate crime incident is defined as, quote, "any incident which the victim or anyone else thinks is based on someone's prejudice towards them because of their race, religion, sexual orientation, disability, or because they're transgender," end quote. So, if two friends or family members of different races argue with one another, a complete stranger who witnessed the exchange can report it to the police as a hate incident. At least one of the transgressors will then be approached by the police and have a hate crime incident report placed on their permanent record. More than 100,000 such cases are registered each year, yet 74% of these, according to the 2017-2018 stats, did not result in any form of prosecution, either because of a lack of evidence, an inability to identify a suspect, or because the initial claim was withdrawn. But the alleged instigators of these so-called crimes have a record nonetheless. And while some of these incidents are certainly crimes worthy of punishment with the full force of the law, it seems that an increasing proportion are little more than someone taking offence at a tweet or a YouTube video. In fact, around the time of the EU referendum, Nigel Farage himself was accused of numerous hate crimes under these poor and tyrannical laws for merely giving speeches in the EU Parliament. But what does all this have to do with McCarthyism? Well, people are living in a state of low-level fear. They will not advocate for causes they feel are just, They will not join organisations, legitimate political parties, for fear of being tainted with the brush of the socially unacceptable. And most importantly, when faced with the full force of the state, bolstered by a loud but powerful minority of angry and vindictive voices, they will not fight. And this is the end game. In 1867, John Stuart Mill said, "Bad men need nothing more to compass their ends than that good men should look on and do nothing." This phrase, later attributed to Edmund Burke as "the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing," is the breaking point for society. When all good men fear the retribution of state actors and zealous ideologues for expressing a simple truth as 2 + 2 = 4, we face a danger that eclipsed even that of the McCarthyist purges. We face the loss of our uniqueness as human beings. Voices are so rarely silenced after a revolution or coup. Lives are taken, property is stolen, people are tortured, rights are denigrated. But all this happens after. Before this time, there is the silencing by those who seek to steal power from the individual. If you can't speak, you can't complain about the steady encroachment on your freedoms. It's the subversive words that will ensure freedom for future generations. And is outside the Overton window where life and liberty thrive.
Go deeper on the topic discussed in this video, head on over to one of these links here or go to our Liberty Nation Roku channel. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell for Liberty.
The Rabbit Hole, Politics and Prose, a LibertyNation.com production.
Available at Libsyn, Apple iTunes, Stitcher, on Roku, and other fine podcast providers.